Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at the DRF Friday race of the day. It is race 10 at Oaklawn Park, a high level allowance race with an $80,000 optional claiming tag. Before we get into the handicapping, though, with this being the Friday race of the day, do note you can get free past performances for this race on the race of the day page at DRF.com. Just create a free account and you get free all access past performances, classic, formulator, Timeform US. And this is definitely a race you want to take a deeper dive into, Mike, because there is a lot going on here. An oversubscribed field of 14, only 12 will get to participate, and it's pretty wide open.
Yeah, this is a really, really good race to end this card on Friday. There's so many different horses that can win here, David. We'll see how it all plays out. The two morning line favorites are the 12 and the 6. They were both entered in the Whitmore last weekend. They scratched. Not sure things got that much easier for them landing in this spot.
Yeah, Glenn Gary is the slight favorite on the morning line at 3-1. He is one of 5 horses coming out of the February 14th allowance race that all are coming back in this field, but a much larger field than they encountered that day. So we'll see if Glenn Gary has as easy as a time getting to the front end in here. Speaking of the pace situation, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And Mike, we know that Glenn Gary's got a ton of early speed, and breaking from the far outside post position with his gate speed, he figures to at least have some options, see which horses are sending inside and how aggressive Francisco Arietta needs to send him to make the front end in here. I think the biggest thing he's got to worry about is potentially the horse drawn right to his outside on the also eligible list, maybe scratching into the field.
Yeah, it doesn't want that horse to get in. I don't think. I mean, it just feels like with such a big field and so many horses that do have enough speed to be forward, it almost feels like this pace has to be competitive. Post 12 is no bargain for Glenn Gary, who's just going to have to run better than he did last time. Rivet, they tried to rate him last time, but he's got the rail here. Maybe they go aggressively. The 8 Frosted Departure, he's got speed, but he hasn't sprinted since the end of 2023. Who knows what you'll get from him? This pace I thought was hard to decipher, but I do think it's going to be contested.
Yeah, I did think it was noteworthy that there is no fast-paced flag showing up for this race, as large as the field is, and I think that does kind of speak to the fact that Glenn Gary is really the only need the lead horse in the race. He does draw that outside post. Let's go through the field, beginning with the horse in the inside post. That's the number 1 Rivet. And Mike, this is a horse who has shown a lot of talent at different points in his career. Does feel like as a 5-year-old now, he's a little long in the tooth, maybe has seen better days. They dropped him into allowance company in his last couple of starts, trying to refine that better form. It hasn't really worked out. He was in that common race won by Durante that a lot of these are exiting, and I just didn't really see the excuse that day.
I didn't either. Listen, he had a post towards the inside in that race too, and they didn't get aggressive with him in there. They didn't try to make the lead. It almost felt like it was by design to try to rate him a little bit and see what happens. And he didn't really respond to it. He didn't run well at all in that race. It feels like his good form has eluded him over the last year or so, David. I mean, he's got races that would make him tough in here. He just hasn't run one of those races in a long time.
Another horse coming out of that February 14th allowance event is the number 2 Run Classic. And Mike, it seems like he's a horse that used to have more early speed than he possesses now. And in his sprint races recently, he's just been dropping way off the pace. I will say he did make a decent late run last time to get up for third, because the race mostly held together towards the front end once Durante and Glenn Gary got towards the lead. And he never was a threat to those two, but at least it was a slight step in the right direction for a horse who's another one looking to get back to his better races from the past.
Have to be concerned that maybe he's just never going to get back to those good races now that he's come back with several starts here in the last few months, and he really hasn't run up to his best. And you're right, the lack of early speed, it's concerning. To me, just being last early in that most recent start, it really gave him no chance to win. I didn't think. I also just hated the trip that he got 2 starts back against a really good field. Those 1-2 finishers in that race they're both really good. I hated the trip he got that day. Listen, to me, he's just a horse who's probably going to get overlooked a little bit now because he hasn't been running his best races. I know that he can beat this field if he shows up with his good effort, and he's going to be a very fair price in here.
The number 3 is Gold Luck. He's another horse that likes to come from far back in the pack. He probably has even less early speed than Run Classic. And Mike, he's coming out of a couple of tough spots where he tried stakes company. You mentioned that David Jacobson trainee Banishing, who's been so tough in recent sprint races at Oaklawn. He ran into him 2 back. Last time was no match for Booth, who feels like he's the new sprint star for Steve Asmussen that's come onto the scene lately. He's dropping in class here. I still wonder if even his best races make him good enough to put him in the winner's circle here.
That was my issue too. Listen, he's been in two tough races since they started back this year, but things do not get any easier for him in this spot. And I just couldn't really locate that one race that made me want to bet him in this spot.
The number 4, Ninja Warrior, has maybe a little more tactical speed than the two we just talked about, and he's chased home a couple of rivals that he'll be meeting here, 2 and 3 back, when he finished 4th behind Red Flag in an allowance race at the N2X level, and then 2 back where he chased home Devil's Tower, who we'll get to in just a moment. And Mike, that 94 buyer, it kind of sticks out as the best race that Ninja Warrior has run in his past performances. For me, it makes me maybe question that fig a little bit when I see it in the context of this horse's past performances. He did drop slightly in class last time, got the victory. He's going to have to run better against this field.
Yeah, I have the same concerns about him as far as the one fast race, 2 starts back. He ran fine in there with a little trouble at the start, but he was never going to win that race. And, he got the job done last time. It wasn't, at least in my opinion, a particularly compelling performance. Just thought he'd have to run better than that.
I think you really have to respect the consistency of the number 5 Devil's Tower, who just always shows up. He's in the money just about every time, no matter where they run him. 18 victories in his career from 40 career starts. And he's a horse that really does seem to like this Oaklawn Park surface. I was going back through his past performances. He's won 8 of his last 11 starts at Oaklawn, one of which was this race that we'll take a look at right here, where he beats the horse that we were just talking about, Ninja Warrior, and does it pretty decisively. He got a very good trip in this race, chasing along the rail around the far turn, tips out at the top of the stretch, and is able to put away Disco Ball, who had been in very good form for David Jacobson. Mike, this got a 99 buyer. Little tough for me to buy this horse running a fig that high, but he is in good form right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I thought he ran well in here with a really good trip. However, of course, it was second off the layoff too. I don't know. I do think he can win this race. I do think he can get the right trip in this race, but he was one of those horses who I just thought I would only really want to bet him if he was going to be, some kind of big price. I don't think you're going to get that.
Mike, I wonder what your take is on the number 6 Durante, because we're both familiar with this horse from when he was competing back in New York. He got really good back in 2023 for David Jacobson, then seemed to go off form last year, and really was not able to resurrect that form until this last race that we'll take a look at, where he ran his typical kind of race where he doesn't break that well, but was able to rush up down the backstretch. And one thing you know about Durante is that when his head is in front, or if he's in the mix at the top of the stretch, he's going to fight it out all the way to the wire, because this is one gritty gelding.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this horse. We'll see. He's got to get out of the gate better in this race, obviously. And listen, just taking this race in isolation, I'd obviously rather have him than Glengarry out of this race. I just thought he ran way better. I guess the flip side of that is he was a really good price in there, and that would have been a really good time to have him, because in that stakes race 2 starts back in December, he just got kind of a miserable trip in that race, and it didn't work out. He obviously got a better one last time after the start. I'm a big fan, David. I think he can win here, but I'm not betting him.
Yeah, and what you said is key. This horse just seems to break slowly in every start now, and doing so in the middle of this 12-horse field could be a real problem if other horses come over on him at the break and he's a step slow. The number 7 is Spankster, a horse that just feels like he's got to get a lot faster if he's going to be competitive with this field. He does have some faster races going back to the beginning of 2024, but those are pretty far down on his PPs.
He's got the right running style for this race too, because he just seems like a horse who can sit a little bit if they go fast in front of him. It seems like he's probably not going to be good enough, assuming several of these other horses show up with their good race. The one thing that I would say about him is it had been a while since he had run in the right spot on a fast dirt track before that race last time. And listen, maybe you disagree. I don't know if you went back through that race. He did not get a good trip in there, and he actually ran at the end. It's been a pretty live race too. I found it really hard to make him in here, but I could see using him underneath at a big price.
He's going to be a fairly big price in here, and he does have a few races in his past that would give him an outside chance. The number 8 is Frosted Departure, who I found pretty interesting in this field as he's turning back in distance after a steady diet of route races going all the way back to the end of 2023. He was in Ken McPeak's barn for a long time, and Chris Hartman and the New Connections dipped in to claim him for $175,000 3 starts back. You don't often see horses getting claimed for that amount of money, and he has been pretty disappointing in both starts since the claim by the new barn, Mike. But those were 2 very fast-paced races where he just kind of ran off on the front end each time and got really tired. I have always kind of harbored the suspicion that this horse doesn't really want to go as far as they've been running him. And he was successful sprinting. If you go all the way back to the beginning of his career, he actually won the Renaissance Stakes at 6 furlongs at Oaklawn Park as a 3-year-old. So I'm intrigued by this turn back.
I am too. I hold the same opinion of him. I always thought that he was a sprinter. Even though you understand why, even McPeak, tried to get him on the Derby Trail there. He was a good 2-year-old. They tried to get him on the Derby Trail. And when that didn't work out, they sprinted him here and there. And he actually ran well in some of those races and then immediately stretched him out again. I'm not sure why they did that. I think I might like him better if these connections claimed him and immediately sprinted him, didn't keep him going long. They didn't do that. But I do think he's dangerous cutting back.
In fairness to the connections, this horse had run buyers of 98, 91, 92 around 2 turns, so it's not like he looked like a sprinter coming into their barn, but maybe he deserves to do so now. And I will show this DRF formulator fact that I found for trainer Chris Hartman, who does very well with this move, turning horses back from routes to sprints on the dirt who are non-maiden, so later in their careers. He's 24 for 95, 25% with a $2.53 ROI. The number 9 is Sir Wellington, another horse who's going to be a bigger price in this race, Mike, and he's got that one big number, the 100 buyer at Delaware last summer that kind of sticks out in his PPs like a sore thumb. But you go back and look at that race, and the number kind of stands up to scrutiny. Shaft's Bullet came back to run a decent speed figure, and Spike Zone is a horse who'd be one of the favorites if he were running in this race. He's a horse that has put together a lot of good performances, 90 plus buyers for trainer Jamie Ness. His form kind of fell apart after that, then went to the sidelines. Maybe he just needed that start off the layoff last time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he didn't run well against a few of these horses last time, but it was his first start back from a long layoff. So I could be lenient there. He does have that one race that gives him a real chance in here. Listen, he's a big price, so I'm not going to knock him, but he's another horse that I just had trouble making.
This barn does have very good numbers, second off a layoff of this type in dirt sprints for whatever that's worth. The number 10, Chiringo, is a horse who has kind of been up and down this winter at Oaklawn Park. He did not get the best trip 3 back over the muddy surface when he got shuffled back around the far turn, never really got a chance to do much running that day. Rebounded with a good victory against second level allowance horses 2 back. Then they tried that tough spot against Booth last time. I guess he never really was going to have a chance in there given the way that race transpired. Just hard to really trust that this horse is going to show up with his best effort here.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I guess the flip side of that is he's probably going to be a fair price in this race again. And so that just sort of I just wanted to leave him open in here because he's another horse who I think can get the right trip in this race. He's not a speed horse. So if they go fast in front of him, the trip could really work out. At the end of the day, since they've decided that he's a dirt horse sort of earlier last year and there's a layoff involved, I think he's run pretty well in every one of his races. You mentioned the trip 3 starts back. He really had no chance last time. Otherwise, his dirt form's rock solid.
The number 11 is a Red Flag, another horse that's dropping out of Stakes Company. He tried that stakes event on the synthetic surface at Turfway Park last time and just kind of derailed the momentum that he had built up coming into that race because it didn't look like he handled that surface at all. He had won 4 of his last 5 starts on dirt coming in there, Mike, having risen at us and claiming races when he returned in California last summer to compete against higher level optional claiming competition more recently. I do feel like he got into some really good form for prior barns that had him in California, and I do wonder if maybe he's starting to go the wrong way, and maybe the last race wasn't just the surface switch, but he does have back dirt races that make him very logical.
Yeah, I agree. He's another horse. So I don't think I would take the 5-1 morning line on him if that's how they bet this race, but I really didn't have any trouble liking this horse and thinking he was a contender in here. I don't care about his last race. I liked his win 2 starts back, even though it was on a wet track. And listen, as you've already pointed out, his overall dirt form, it makes me think he can go with these horses if he gets the right trip.
And rounding out the main body of this field on the outside is the number 12, Glengarry. We talked about that February 14th race quite a bit already with 5 horses coming out of there. He finished second to Durante on that occasion. And I didn't feel like he had a major excuse, Mike. He outbroke Durante, was in front early, got to set a comfortable pace, and was just run down by that foe in the late stages. And he's been a little bit disappointing since returning from this layoff in the middle of last year. That said, his gate speed is reliable, and I think that counts for a lot in this large field. He should be able to get out ahead of these horses, and I think he's going to run well. I just don't know if he's going to offer much value.
Yeah, agreed. And listen, I wouldn't bet him off of not only the last race, I don't think I'd even bet him off the race 2 starts back. I just didn't think he ran well in that race either. We'll see if he can finally turn it around. He's still very lightly raced. He is going to get Lasix for the first time here. We'll see if it makes any kind of a difference. If he's the favorite or one of the favorites, I'm betting somebody else.
Just a quick mention of the two horses that could potentially draw into this race, particularly the number 13 King Cab. I mean, Mike, he's basically a quarter horse in thoroughbreds clothing. I mean, he's a horse that really wants to run in the early stages of his races, and he has the speed to get in front of Glengarry if he gets in here. Just tough to see him staying the trip against a field of this quality.
Just totally changes the complexion of the race if he's in. So you do have to wait for scratches to see what happens. The horse that's drawn to the far outside, I don't listen. We'll see what we get from him third off the layoff, but he's got back races that would give him a real chance in here.
Let's throw up our picks for this Friday race of the day. And Mike, I think you're hoping this pace comes apart a little bit because you went to the number 2 Run Classic, and he's going to need things to fall apart in the front end, but he did show signs of life last time.
Yeah, not totally convinced that he's still the horse that he once was, but again, his good race I think gives him a real chance in here. I don't like the trips he's gotten in his last 2 races. I'm hoping he gets a better one here, and he's going to be a price.
And I'm just really intrigued by this turn back on the number 8 Frosted Departure. I don't think we're going to get the 20-1 morning line, but even at half of that, he's a horse that I'd want to take a shot with in this race. 8, 12, 9, 2 for me, and 2, 11, 10, 7 for Mike in the Friday race of the day, race 10 at Oaklawn Park. Good luck if you're playing the races later this week.